father, Conrad Salinas, was here a little while ago. My name is Elias Salinas, and just in case anybody wants to know, I don't know exactly what's going on, but everybody apparently seems to be very angry at me. My mother, my father, my brothers, and my sister, the Pearsall Police Department, as well as my probation officer and my local probation department, and my local church just kicked me out. And so, with that being said, when somebody is kicked out of a church, that means that they become a heretic. Which that's not a very nice title to have. That's an extremely insulting title to have. Anyways, my dad, Conrad Salinas, had said he was going to turn off my phone. So I'm not going to have a data connection to be able to make any calls or send any messages on Facebook or anything like that or on YouTube. So if anybody needs to get in contact with me, the house phone to where I'm staying at, the number is 830-505-7227. All are welcome to the table. In reading Kathleen M. Carroll's article in the October issue of St. Anthony Messenger, The Reformation at 500, I came across an item on page 34 that disturbs me greatly about the attitude of the Catholic hierarchy. Despite the progress toward unity, Bishop Madden cautions we cannot simply ignore the differences or take communion together. This attitude is completely opposite to Christ's attitude toward everybody. At the Last Supper, the institution of the Eucharist, did he not serve Judas, despite knowing his grave sin? There is no Christian reason to deny anyone communion. It is the communicant who is responsible for having the faith that the celebrant is delivering Jesus' body and also treating the bread with reverence. Also, the practice of excommunication of any believer is an unchristian act, as it denies forgiveness, the bedrock of our Christian faith. Also, in Paul's letter on love, he specifically states that we are not to force our beliefs on anyone. G.K. Chesterton remarked back in the early 20th century that Christianity had yet to be observed, and we on all denominations continue to maintain this separatism. Pope Francis' actions to continue the observance of Vatican II to reconcile our differences are refreshing and needed. Pierre Demers, Franklin, Massachusetts. So right there it says, also the practice of excommunication of any believer is an unchristian act. And denying anybody the institution of the Eucharist, It's also unchristian pretty much as well, because Jesus served Judas at the Last Supper, even though he knew that Judas was going to betray him. So why am I saying this? Because, I mean, I made a video earlier about me minding my own business. I mind my own business. I don't bother anybody. But Satan only attacks those who he sees as a threat. So, again, followers of Satan are attacking me again. So I take this time to mention that this all started whenever I was passing novenas at the Catholic Church, and then me ended up getting kicked out and banned from that church, which is basically the same thing as excommunication. So in that video, even though I was being investigated by multiple officers, the main ones responsible for me getting kicked out of that Catholic church was Raul Daniel Zapata and Father Camacho. I don't know his first name, and I don't really care what his first name is, unless I need to file a police report against him. But then I would need to find out his first name. But in that video, Raul Daniel Zapata comes up to me and says that it's Father Camacho who doesn't want me there anymore. I didn't actually do anything wrong. I didn't commit a crime. That's why I wasn't arrested. And if I was getting kicked out because of my religious beliefs, well, it says right there in this magazine that I just read that the act of excommunication is an unchristian belief. It's wrong. What Father Camacho did to me was wrong. He shouldn't have done that. And what Raul Daniel Zapata did to me was wrong as well. So they're definitely not my friends. That's for sure. So at this point, I'm going to assume that those two individuals are doing something at the church that they're not supposed to be doing. And I'm going to make this video public to know that, well, at this point, I mean, I had to spend 16 months in CP and in jail because of Raul Daniel Zapata sneaking up behind me at my apartment located at 1005 Power Plant Road. He arrested me. He grabbed me from behind and arrested me and said that I was being arrested for public intoxication, which by definition of law, public intoxication is when someone is above the legal limit, the legal alcohol limit in their blood, which therefore declares them by law intoxicated with alcohol in a public place is the guideline for the arrest of public intoxication. I wasn't in a public place. I wasn't even drinking that night. And I was in my doorway of my property where I was living at 1005 Power Plant Road. So I was walking in and out of my kitchen through my front door and on my front porch. I wasn't creating a neighborhood disturbance, but he arrested me for public intoxication anyways. He transported me to the Frio County Jail. And at this point, I don't have any problem saying it anymore. I basically said that I was going to beat him up because I was upset that him and Father Camacho had kicked me out of the church. And now he was arresting me for public intoxication when I wasn't publicly intoxicated. I wasn't doing nothing wrong. I shouldn't have said that because it was wrong to have said what I said. And I'm only sorry to God for the sin I committed. I'm not sorry towards Daniel Zapata. I'm only regretful towards the fact that because of what I said, Raul Daniel Zapata was now able to arrest me for obstruction and retaliation of an officer, which is a felony. And because of that, I had to spend 16 months in jail. Despite the fact that what he did of being instrumental in kicking me out of the church was wrong, as well as Father Camacho they were both wrong. So I'm not here to try to say that, well, at this point, because of what's happening, yeah, I'm here to say that they were wrong what they did, and I was right. And I believe that they should be reprimanded in accordance to God's holy will, for God is right and just. So I'm not wishing evil upon them, but I do want them to be reprimanded for what they did to me. and if punishment is what needs to be done, well then I want them to be punished, because I don't deserve to be going through this. I didn't do anything wrong. And upon excommunication, that makes a person a heretic. So of course, I grew up with Daniel, so I already know how he's gonna act whenever he sees this video. He's gonna claim that he's right. Um, he's gonna say a lot of bad, negative things about me. And he's gonna say that I have no right to be saying what I'm saying. But I don't care about that anymore. I did my job as trying to be as much of a good person as I possibly could have. Getting kicked out of the church, spending 16 months in jail, then having the probation department as well as my own parents trying to revoke my probation, losing my SSI check, losing my housing voucher, and everything else that came along with it. And I'm still thankful to God that it hasn't actually been totally terminated. I still have the opportunity to be able to get all that back. And I actually still have the opportunity to be accepted back into the church. It's not a permanent thing. But I will say this for the record, that someone did in fact try killing me throughout this entire process, from the time I got kicked out of the church to the time I was released from jail. So I'm going to assume that, I'm not going to blame anybody, but I'm going to assume that some of these individuals that I just mentioned have something to do with it. For some reason, they don't want me to go back to the church. So I'm not incriminating anybody. I'm not blaming anybody and saying any wrongful accusations towards anybody. I'm just saying that I'm going to go ahead and assume that they're more than likely involved with having something to do with whatever is happening to me. Does it bother me? No, it doesn't bother me. But I wasn't bothering them to begin with. And I could just mind my own business and continue letting them attack me like the way that they are. And it technically is my job to make sure that good things are happening in society, in Pearsall, and at the church. Because that is the job of a good, devoted Christian or Catholic, to make sure that, God's word and holy will are prospering amongst his people and living in peace. Even though a lot of people don't answer to that call and they just, attend to their daily jobs and, go home and rest up for the next day of work. A lot of people are not too concerned about what happens on Sunday, which is them having to attend church. But what can I say? I'm an overachiever. Like I said, I have a perfectionism complex. Some people might even argue that I have a Messiah complex, a Jesus complex, and a God complex. But like I said in an earlier video, I was just joking. But I do have a perfectionism complex. Yeah, so the number to my house is 830-505-7227. If anybody wants to get in contact with me. Because even after I left St. P and the halfway house in Victoria, Texas, the cops have been over here to this residence where I'm staying at my parents' house. They've already been here twice. And anybody that's been on probation, if you get arrested while you're on probation, that's an automatic revocation of probation. So that would mean, despite the fact that I spent 16 months in jail or prison or whatever people want to call it or whatever, that wouldn't mean anything, because that would mean that as upon revocation that I would be getting sent back for the same amount of time, or possibly even more time. So it's extremely insultive for whoever's responsible of being responsible for what's happening to me, for them conjuring up the idea in their mind, thinking about it, and then putting it into actual practice. But I mentioned in another video that, between ages 1 through like 12 or 15, I used to care about what people thought about me. And then when I realized that, I had my sister tell me the other day that, she goes, Elias, you're crazy. You're not going to heaven. You're delusional. So I thought, because my sister was so disrespectful, that I might as well be entitled to my own opinion. I'm clearly going to heaven. I'm an extremely talented individual. And even though I have acne scars on my face, I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm not an ugly individual. And I'm a decently looking, handsome man. Because I'm definitely not ugly. And that feels liberating to be able to say that. So despite me being vain and making such a vain comment like that, I would like to end this video on another note. With whoever taught me the truth of knowing that Satan only attacks those who he sees as a threat. It would not matter even if I was the ugliest person on the face of the earth. If I'm holy like the way how I'm making myself out to be holy, which that's what I'm saying, I'm holy because, I know what I practice in private, and also I have proof by all the attacks that are being brought into my life. Satan is constantly attacking me. I'm not doing anything, so it's not me who's causing all this trouble. So I haven't even technically pissed in Satan's cereal. I haven't dropped a dookie in Satan's dinner either. But apparently he already knows that I guess I'm capable of doing that. Which his dinner and his cereal would be a metaphorical reference for his plots of evil. And I guess I gotta do something about, no, he's not gonna say guess. I have to do something about Elias Salinas, because if he continues going about his life, he's going to ruin my plans. He's going to mess everything up. And I'm okay with fulfilling that role. Because there's a rapper named SPM. He has a song. I don't know what the name of the song is, whatever. But one of the lyrics in his song is, I'm just trying to get my slice of the pizza. All my life, I've just been trying to get my slice of the pizza. Which is the metaphorical reference from, hey man, I don't got nothing against anybody. I mind my own business. I'm just trying to go about my life, taking care of myself, being happy with whatever money I can obtain in my hand, having the ability and the luxury of being able to enjoy the occasional beer, and being surrounded by beautiful women, or having a beautiful wife, or having a beautiful girlfriend. And I don't need that luxurious yacht. I don't need any of that stuff. I just need those couple of 3 things I said, Or like in a song that I wrote. Some food and a place to call my home. Appreciation from someone I adore, which is my wife or girlfriend. A clean conscience like the mind of a child, which is metaphorical for being pure of heart and clean of mind, body, and soul and spirit. That's what I really want instead of falling down, which is a metaphorical reference for an attack by Satan. My tongue would be blessed and it speak out miracles enough to persuade all the fools that done wrong. Metaphorical reference for my tongue would be blessed, which is by God, and speak out miracles, which is the ability to talk into persuading others and leading them into salvation, enough to persuade all the fools that done wrong, which is another metaphorical reference for fools is anybody who believes that whatever they can do on their own without God is enough to be able to lead them to salvation, which is any fool that's ignorant enough to say that whatever they can do with their own money or with their own mind or whatever their own inventions can lead them to a prosperous life. I'd spread my wisdom from the lessons I had learned. And then I wrote this song whenever I was about maybe like 21 years old. So it's a pretty old song that I never got to record and put on record, because I ultimately didn't get to see any of my hopes and dreams come true. All the hopes and dreams that I had in my life, did not get to come true at all. Because like I said, someone did in fact try killing me on multiple occasions. So I used the reference in my mind. I go, well, Elias, if you actually died during that assassination attempt, right? It would have been written in stone that you didn't get to accomplish anything that you wanted. You didn't get to become an actor. You didn't get to become a musician. You didn't get to become a boxer. You didn't do anything as far as, trying to be able to create and invent your own video game, or, do something with video games, even if it's like doing Let's Plays on YouTube or whatever. You weren't successful in meeting a significant other that, which is basically your twin flame or whatever, your perfect companion and with everything compatibility. You didn't get to do anything that people would say is what ultimately makes a person fulfilled and happy in life. But those are all selfish desires, because I knew the answer to this question even as a kid, whenever my guitar instructor, Mr. Martinez, told me to do everything for the glory of God. I didn't have to read the entire Bible to understand what that meant. I didn't have to go to church and receive the catechism, or go to, receive Holy Communion and drink the bread and eat the bread and eat and drink the wine. I didn't have to go to CCD. I didn't have to commit, acts of generosity or charity. It's just the belief and firm fact that God is real. And with that being said, it comes back down to my story of me being accepted into the Brown Scapular Fraternity, which is my belief of total detachment from this world, which is me ultimately going through something similar to what the Saint Job did in the Bible. Job was a man that was blessed by God and had everything that a person could possibly ever want and imagine. He had a nice house, he had money, he had nice everything. He had, God blessed him with, I'm going to assume, perfect kids and a perfect wife. And one day Satan goes to heaven and talks to God and says, the only reason why Job likes you and does your will is because you give him everything. I bet if I ruin his entire life, take everything away, and just wreak havoc on his life, that he'll stop loving you. And I bet that I can get him to even curse you and say bad things about you. And then God said, all right, go ahead, have at it. You can do whatever you want to Job, you just can't kill him. So Satan went ahead and started ruining Job's life. He murdered his kids. He took away all his possessions, his house. Great disasters happened that, Job lost his house, he lost his money, he lost everything that he could ever imagine. I don't actually know if he lost his wife, so I could be wrong. That I need to go back and read this, because the story of Job is like one of the only books that I actually read in the Bible. He loses everything. And the first thing upon losing everything, and Job says that God has giveth and he's taken away. He's kind of accepting to what has happened to him, why his life is in shambles. But the suffering continues, and it goes on for a considerable amount of time. His body is covered in boils, which is, I'm just going to say for my sake, is like the equivalent of having a bunch of pimples all over your body. His life becomes absolutely miserable. He doesn't have any of the things that a person would think that a person would need to have in order to be considered a favorite by God or blessed by God. His friends that he had at the time even become disrespectful of Job because they have the nerve to talk to Job and say that, Job, the reason why this is happening to you is because you're not who you say you are. You're not holy. You must be doing something wrong in private, and you must be a hypocrite. You must be not holy. You must be doing evil things because that's the reason why God's punishing you. And of course, that wasn't true at all. Job was perfect in all his ways. But there was something I learned at the end of the story that I didn't understand whenever I read this when I was about 21 years old. When all my entire life, no, my life pretty went down the drain when I was about 15 years old when I got arrested for the first time. But 21 was when I realized that my life was definitely not going to be traditionally the same as compared to others. Because by 21, people are generally attending college, or they already have lined up stabilized jobs that are going to lead them to being able to, like a job like that. I don't think you need to go to college to become a postman or whatever. But those are good, stable jobs or whatever that lead a person to being able to have a productive life and be able to support themselves. And hopefully, because I would think that people generally want to be happy, and being able to have a family is what can make a person happy. So my life was not going to be like that at all. My life was nothing but pure suffering. I lost my health, I lost my wealth, and I didn't get to achieve any of those dreams that I selfishly sought after. But anyways, back to the story of Job. So his friends basically betray him because if you have now your friends that are supposedly supposed to be supportive, they're not supportive of Job anymore. They're basically like, Job, you lost everything because you're a sinner. But anyways, what I didn't understand back at 21 when I read this story, now that I understand at 32, was that wonder where I put my Bible. Where did it go? Well, I don't actually need that because I can say what I need to say without reading it. There is no man or woman that walks on this earth that does not sin. And even though the story starts off with it making references and declaration of saying that Job is perfect and sinless in all his ways, at that present time, upon going through this Job-like trials of losing everything, Job ultimately ends up cursing God. And he demands that God gives him an answer for why he's going through what he's going through. And God is almighty and omnipotent. He doesn't need to answer to anybody. But that's what Job does. He demands that God gives him an answer. And without saying the fancy story that is said in the Bible, God basically says, Job, you're guilty of idolatry, of worshiping yourself. You have committed a sin. You're not perfect in all your ways like how you think you are. Only I, God the Father Almighty, am perfect. Which is a metaphorical reference for my mind has just been blown away. It's pretty deep, huh? Because technically he started off the story with being faultless and blameless. But he had everything that a person could ever want. There was no reason for him to be angry or to be mad at God. And then Satan gave him a reason to be angry, and then he did become angry at God. He said, God, I don't deserve this. This should not be happening to me. And therefore then making him guilty of the sin of idolatry, of worshiping himself, thinking that he's just as good as God. Which of course, no, that's not true. He's not as good as God. But anyways, another part of the story that I didn't understand when I read it the first time, whenever I was like around 21 years old, was that Job is forgiven, and God says that I'm going to give you a gift. When I read it at 21, I thought it was a reward, that God was rewarding him. But again, God is almighty and omnipotent and worthy of all praise. He doesn't have to answer to anybody. He doesn't even need to provide an answer to anybody for what he does and why he does it. So it was not a reward, because despite all the suffering that Job went through, God does not need to be obligated to give Job a reward, no matter how bad Job's life got. So that's what I didn't understand when I read it when I was 21. It was not a reward. What it was is a gift. A gift is something that is given freely as a token of appreciation and generosity from one person to another. But this would not be a person. It would be God the Father Almighty giving it to Job. Then Job gets all his stuff back. And that's the end of the story. Again, my mind has been blown away. But there's been other art references that I've reflected upon after reading the story of Job, and ultimately knowing that, not everybody is going to be able to relate to the story of Job, because everybody's different. Everybody's uniquely different in everything and all that they do. So what happens if somebody goes through what Job did, and God decides not to give the gift? And God provided an answer for that too as well. Because after going through my Job-like trials, I did the same thing that Job did. I demanded God to give me an answer. I demanded that God would give me an answer to, oh God, why is this happening to me? And the perfect song that makes the perfect reference as to how I felt, what I was feeling whenever I was going through the Job-like trials, which started at around age 14, and they ended at 32. But I guess technically they haven't ended yet, because Satan's still attacking me. But I would say that for a majority of the part, it started at 15 to 32. So I don't know how many years that is. That's a good, decent amount of time. But I'm gonna, never mind. I'm gonna go ahead and say that it started at 15, at age 15, and it ended at 32, because at 32 I was accepted into the Brown Scapular Brotherhood fraternity, which is basically an acceptance into heaven. And And that's the part of my mind being blown away. Because there's those lyrics from that song Blue by the Seatbelts and Yoko Ono that plays at the ending credits of Cowboy Bebop's ending. And some of the lyrics of the song are I asked myself what it's all for. And I don't know what it actually says after that. Something like, I know nothing about it. I couldn't answer. Something like that. But I clearly could answer. Like, what did I go through? What I went through from 15 to 32? Why did I go through it? And the answer is, oh, I went through it because I got accepted into heaven. That's what I went through it for. So it doesn't matter that I didn't get to become a boxer. It doesn't matter that I didn't get to become a musician. It doesn't matter that I didn't get to become an actor, a director, or whatever I wanted to do with video games. None of that matters. It doesn't even matter if I ever got married or had kids. It doesn't even matter if I even was able to find myself a decent, appropriate girlfriend. None of that matters. It doesn't matter that I never won the lottery or became rich. None of that matters. It's all meaningless and it's all pointless. It's all trivial and it's all attachment to the world. All that matters is one thing. That's making it into heaven. So, if anybody wants to contact me, my number is 830-505-7227 because my phone might get turned off. So my dad said that he was going to turn on my phone. So to go through a brief summary of what this video was about was, if you need to call me, my number is 830-505-7227. And what Father Camacho did and what Raul Daniel Zapata did to me was wrong. Excommunication is unchristian. I deserve to be accepted back into the Catholic Church. And am I demanding? Nah, I'm not demanding. There comes a point in time in my life where even I make jokes. There's a picture that I was seen on the internet more than a couple of times. Whenever I have one of those mind-blowing revelations, right, and I'm like, oh, I went through all this suffering because, it's ultimately supposed to lead me getting accepted into heaven, right? So when I have one of those godlike moments where I feel kind of Christ-like, there's that picture on the internet where God's like extending his hands like this. He has one finger pointed that way, he has another finger pointed that way. He's like in a cloud, and he goes, whoa, like that. So I do that. And then there's also the character Akuma from Street Fighter, when he has the kanji symbol on his back that represents heaven or God's protection. Which, just in case of children are watching this video, it's a representation of providence and God's protection. But in that world, I guess it was supposed to be an achievement of being the closest thing what it's like to become like God. And because I would want to make sure that any kid that hears what I'm speaking of hears this and goes, well, I think I want to become like Akuma. Well, murder is breaking one of the 10 commandments. So no, it's not a good idea, children, to become like Akuma. It's a lot better and cooler to become like Goken and Ryu and Ken and Gotetsu. They don't murder. So, if anybody hears me making references about Akuma, the kanji on his back actually means heaven. That's all that it means. I'm gonna have one of my nerd moments right now, and I'm not upset or afraid or embarrassed about this, but any young kid out there that's struggling between whether or not they want to choose the path of good and evil, the path to take is always being accepted into heaven. It's always best to have a kind, gentle, and pure heart as opposed to having a heart that's full of hate and wrath with thoughts of murder. That's never a good thing. Because ultimately the reward is acceptance into heaven. And I would like to thank the creators of Capcom and Street Fighter because they provided years of the perfect type of story that I would need to be able to guide me into the position of being able to become a good person that is genuine and kind of heart, with the story of Ryu from Street Fighter, which is a person that emotionally suffers from having two paths to take, which everybody goes through in life. But he is more prone to this because I guess it could be said that Satan clearly wants him to become a part of his army because Satan sees him as a threat. Anyways, there's a video moment whenever Ryu fights Akuma in Street Fighter 4, I believe. And Akuma's opening line says, "Still haven't transcended humanity yet." And Ryu responds back by saying, "You haven't transcended humanity, you've thrown it away." Which I'm going to now say that that's anybody who practiced satanic witchcraft and sorcery. Anybody who practices satanic witchcraft and sorcery is being like Akuma. And the power of nothingness would be someone who prays the Holy Rosary daily. You could say that I would have a right to get angry at what a lot of people have done to me, getting kicked out of the church and then having to spend 16 months in jail. Going back to the story of Job, all that is trivial. It was absolutely necessary for me to get kicked out of the church and spend 16 months in jail in order to make it into heaven. Because that wasn't just all that I went through. No, like I said, this story starts technically when I was at 1 years old. But if I was gonna make a movie, and someone gave me a budget, and they said you're gonna have to try your best to fit in the entire thing within an hour and 30 minutes, I would want to spend most of the time of what happened to me starting at age 15 to 32, as opposed to starting from 1 and trying to go from 1 to 32. But in technically, it's not even that, important either. It's not that important either. Because it would just be basically another Job story. A guy is born. He goes through a bunch of stuff. He finds salvation. The end. God bless you all.